Hey guys, NINGEN'S here, bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. And so the other day on Twitter, I finally decided to post my first ever tier list. I made a top 10 Dokkan Fest exclusive TURs on Global. So I'm excluding units that are Easy Aid. I am obviously excluding like Dokkan Fest LRs. This is just Dokkan Fest exclusive TURs currently available on Global. So obviously there's no Videl and there's no Goten and Trunks. So I did post this on my Twitter. So if you follow me, and you guys should be following me at the Master Ningen, you'll have seen this already, although I did actually change the number 10 spot. So I thought I would make this video to go over who I put where and why. You know, like I said, some of you will have seen the list already, but I didn't go into a huge amount of detail. I got some very good feedback overall. A lot of people generally agreed, aside with maybe having a unit that they would switch in place with the unit above it. So I thought it would just be interesting to make this video and go over the tier list for those of you who either haven't seen it yet or just want some more context on why I put units where I did. So you guys will know, if you've been around the channel for a while, tier lists are not something that I usually do. I've said before in videos or on Twitter or like with other people in discussions, I don't really do a tier list because I know everyone's personal tier list is just their opinion. And I feel like whenever you post something like this, being like, okay, these are the top 10 units, like anyone who disagrees is just going to start arguing with you about various different aspects. And you got to remember that in a game like this, people can value units in different ways. If you're somebody who, to you, the best units in the game are the units that hit the highest attack stats as early as possible and do the most damage, you're going to have a very different tier list to somebody whose favourite thing to do on the game is try different team builds on the legendary Goku event, and so maybe they value like defense or units that build up over time. Maybe they like some of the units that have transformations that take longer or are harder to see because they happen later on in long form events. So those two people are going to have two different tier lists. Now, I don't really care if you don't agree with my opinions. It's just the fact that I've seen people get pretty toxic over stuff like this. So shout out to my boy Sora. Whilst I don't agree with his tier list, when we did the 5-9 Gaming top 10 TURs, he got a lot of like negative feedback from people about his list, which if you disagree, fine, but be civil. So shout out to him. He's been a good sport about it. There has been some funny memes. We all still meme on him about how Blue King Goku is trash. But yeah, if you don't agree with my tier list, I'm perfectly happy with you explaining why in the comments, as long as you're chill about it, and I will happily discuss my reasonings further in the comments, because I can definitely see, even though this is my list, like there are certain units who I could be perfectly fine if you said this exact same list but you switched two units around who are side by side, like I would be perfectly fine with that, but we'll talk about that in detail. So starting off, we have the number 10 spot. This is the one that I changed from what I originally tweeted out. So originally I put AGL Transforming Bardock at number 10. The only reason really that I did this was I found it really easy to do 1 to 9. And then when I got to 10 and I was looking at the remaining like Dokkan Fest exclusive TURs that are not EZA units, I was having trouble deciding who to put in. So at that point I kind of just wanted to be finished. So I threw Bardock in for the memes because I do really like transforming AGL Bardock, and you guys know I am a Bardock fan. But upon further reflection and talking about it with a couple of people, Hazink was one of them, shout out to him, I decided to put Int Gotenks at number 10. I think maybe because I only have him at 55% and I haven't used him as much. It's probably why I maybe overlooked him when I made the list the first time. But he's super, super good. So he greatly raises defense, which is really good for any sort of difficult event. All the way up to Super Saiyan 3, where then he obviously raises attack as well. For things like Super Battle Road, when you get to Super Saiyan, which is on turn 3, he has a 70% chance to stun. So super, super useful. And yeah, even at 55%, he can hit some really, really good defensive numbers and some decent offensive numbers as well. And then one thing I actually really like, which I kind of forgot about until I used him for the first time in a long time, is that his Super Saiyan 3 form, whilst it takes a long time to get there, the timing is actually kind of perfect. He hits the Super Saiyan 3 transformation around the time that Int Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta loses his passive, with the extra bit of attack and defense and the guaranteed type advantage. So essentially, Gogeta loses a little bit of his damage output, but then Gotenks jumps up in becoming a massive damage dealer. So I actually do really like him. He is on quite a lot of categories as well. So overall, I think he is very, very solid. So he definitely deserves the number 10 spot. Now, moving on to number 9. This is the one that I knew would be a bit contentious for some people, because I think a lot of people would put Beerus higher in their own personal tier list. And this, again, is where I say things come down to, like, personal preference, right? So, for me, like, I know that Beerus can hit a lot harder than some of the units that are above him in my tier list. But for me, a lot of it comes down to functionality, like where I use the units, how I build my teams, like that sort of thing. And for me, when I run Realm of Gods, I'm always running Realm of Gods with, like, the Saiyan units. So, like, UI Goku, the Blue Fusions, like, all those sort of units. Now, Beerus is really, really good, but you kind of have to run him on rotation with either Whis or Vados, or I guess a push Champa, but that would not be good. And then if you're running, like, double Beerus leads, the other Beerus becomes a third slot floating unit who doesn't provide any support and doesn't link well with the rest of the team. So a lot of the most popular units on Realm of Gods, especially for me, are units who don't synergize well with Beerus. And then, of course, like, you have to put him in the first slot to get his full effectiveness. He does raise his defense after taking the first hit, but if you're unlucky and the first hit in the first slot is a super attack, then obviously he can take a ton of damage. But, I mean, he's still really good. Like, if you build the Realm of Gods team around him to, like, show his true colors, like, he's super, super powerful. So I definitely wouldn't put him, like, out of my top 10. It's just, for me, he's a little bit lower than some of the other ones, whilst I can obviously recognize just how ridiculously powerful he is. So moving on to 7 and 8, we have the Super Saiyan 2 transforming Dual Dokkan Fest Goku and Vegeta. Vegeta obviously transforms to Majin Vegeta. Super Saiyan 2 Angel Goku transforms to Super Saiyan 3 Angel Goku. This is one of the ones that I kind of mentioned at the beginning, where if you wanted to say you think that Goku is 7 and Vegeta is 8, like that's fine, right? I think you can kind of split hairs between these two units. But for me, because they are so very similar, I couldn't put Vegeta at 7 and then not have Goku at 8. Like, for me it'd be weird to put Vegeta at 7 and then say have Beerus at 8 and Goku at 9, because they are very, very similar. So they do have a little bit of restriction, like pre-transformation as well as post, where you do have to pick up a certain number of orbs if you want them to get their full potential. Pre-transformation, you need to pick up 3 orbs, and then they get a nice little bit of extra attack and defense. And then, of course, once they have transformed into their Majin Vegeta or Super Saiyan 3 state, they need to pick up orbs to become either super effective, guard, dodge, those sort of things. So for me, I think Vegeta is slightly better overall. I think the things that kind of like push him over that line to be better than Goku is I think his leader skill is much better. I'm a huge fan of the Super Saiyan 2 category and that team, and Super Saiyan 2 plus Resurrected Warriors is a really good mix of units, whereas Otherworld Warriors and Super Saiyan 3 is basically just the Super Saiyan 3 team but with Gogeta on it. So Goku's leader skill, not as good. And then obviously when you're getting the special bonuses from the orbs, both of them have the chance to become attacks effective against all types. Vegeta's is slightly easier to get. And then when you get the 6 orbs, Vegeta guards all attacks, which is obviously very, very useful. Even in long form events, like post super attack, he can take double digit damage from like any super attack, which is really, really good. Whereas Goku's defensive orb thing is for 3 orbs, he gets a 33% chance to dodge. Now, obviously, if you get that to trigger, you take 0 damage, but you have a 66% chance that you're not going to dodge, and then you just take all the damage. So obviously guarding, I think, is much superior in that situation. So that's why I put Vegeta over Goku. But like both of them, for example, they fit onto more teams and they synergize much better than units like, for example, Beerus, who you're pretty much only running on Realm of Gods, which is why I consider them to be slightly better. So moving on to 5 and 6, we have Cooler and Bojack. This is another one where some people had said in the comments, and I do agree when I posted the original tweet, if you wanted to switch them around, so Bojack was 5 and Cooler was 6, I would have no problem with that. Because they're both very similar. When Bojack came out, a lot of people were memeing about the fact that he was basically a Cooler clone, because they are incredibly similar. But there are little things here and there that I feel makes it, for me, that Cooler is slightly better. So pre-transformation, I do actually think Bojack is better, because the support that they give to their categories, Cooler is obviously conditional on the number of enemies you're fighting. He's either supporting Transformation Boost or Terrifying Conquerors. So depending on how you've built your team, even if you're keeping one cooler on main rotation, the third one that is floating is going to support different members of your team build depending on which event you take them into. And obviously if you go into Super Battle Road, for example, you'll be supporting Terrifying Conquerors until the turn where there's only one enemy left, and then you're supporting Transformation Boost. And if that happens to be on a rotation where neither of the enemies are in that, neither of the other units, on the rotation are in Transformation Boost, but they were in Terrifying Conquerors, they're now not getting that support buff. So it's a little bit more inconsistent, whereas Bojack always supports Space Traveling Warriors, and then the more enemies you have, the more of a support buff that he gives. So you're never left in a situation where if you're going to use him as a support unit, ideally it's because the rest of your rotation is Space Traveling Warriors, you're not going to get into a situation where they're not getting support. But then when we look at the post-transformation, I do actually prefer Cooler. Bojack does become incredibly strong. He obviously has the chance to launch an additional super, gets a bunch of extra attack and defense if you pick up enough orbs, which can be annoying when you can't get the orbs. Whereas obviously Cooler, once he transforms, I mean, when he came out, he was hand down the best TUR in the game. And then when Gohan came out, who was like the next contender for best TUR in the game, it wasn't clear cut. Like, people argued a lot about who was the best out of those two. And that's because once he transforms, you get guaranteed crits against Pure Saiyans and Hybrid Saiyans, which is like 3/4 of the game. Then, of course, you have that chance to launch an additional super, which we know can help to trigger additional super from the Hidden Potential system. So on his best turn, this Cooler can super attack 3 times, which against a lot of enemies is going to be guaranteed crits. So he does a ridiculous amount of damage, plus his transformation animation and his super attack animations, for me personally, I think are better than Bojack. So I would put him just over Bojack because of the post-transformation. So then we go on to slot 4, we have Frieza. This is the one that is a little bit shaky for me, and I know some people might put him higher, some people might put him lower, I guess, depending on your preferences. But for me, this Frieza, I recognize how really, really good he is. So in his base angel form, he's really good. And then obviously in his golden angel form, he's really good. The fact that you can transform him straight away on turn 1 is cool. It does also help out with team building, because you could, if you're running him as double leads, you could transform one and not the other, and then they're each other's best link partner, so they can be really good. And they have a lot of utility. So in the base form, he infinitely stacks defense and can seal the enemy's super attack. And then when you transform up to gold, you have a lot more damage. You do, is it 70? Yeah, 70% chance of stunning the attacked enemy. And he has damage reduction if you're on low HP. So because you can transform him straight away, that gives you a lot of utility. Like, if you specifically want one of those abilities, you're not having to wait multiple turns to get access to them, because you can just transform him straight away if you want to. Now, for me, I had to put him this high up on the list because I can see just how good he is. But he's not in the top 3 for me solely because I don't think I've really ever used him. I pulled him from his original banner, I made a bunch of videos on him, and whilst I know that he's really good, he's not on a ton of the teams that I like to run. And because of his link set, he obviously does have the classic, like, Wicked Bloodline links, but then he does also have Tournament of Power, which is like a dead link on teams like Wicked Bloodline or Transformation Boost. So when I'm putting together, like, say for example, the actual STR Cooler team, where I'd even run him as a Wicked Bloodline leader, because most of them are on Transformation Boost or Terrifying Conquerors, I don't use this Frieza. Like, there are other units that I pick, like, above him to go on that team to serve other purposes. So it's one of those weird things where I recognize that he's super, super good, and I think it would be a crime for him to be, like, not even in the top 5. But, like, he's not in the top 3 because, just for me, I just don't enjoy using him as much as these other 3 units that are in my top 3. But like I said many times, with this all being subjective, if you think that Frieza is better than any of the units that I've put in the top 3, then that's all good, you know? I just don't enjoy using him as much as the top 3. So, speaking of the top 3, we have, at number 3, Tech Ultimate Gohan. So, Tech Ultimate Gohan, again, when he came out, immediately joined the discussion of, is he the best TUR in the game? He infinitely stacks his attack and defense. He guards, which is super good, obviously, for hard events, because he can be good defensively even against multiple different enemy typings. And then, of course, if you put him in slot 1, you do get a nice little attack bonus once you get hit. And he's not like, say, Beerus, where you want to get hit once to boost your attack, but you're risking taking a ton of damage because he guards. So even though he does raise defense on super attacks, obviously he's going to take less damage after attacking. He's still perfectly defensively viable in slot 1. And then especially because he's infinitely stacking, by the time you get to his next rotation, he's even more viable in slot 1 because his defense has increased. And then of course, once you decide to transform into Ultimate Gohan, he just becomes incredibly powerful. He only has to get hit once, and then that attack buff passive is active for the whole of the rest of the game. If you're in a long form event, then obviously your defense is going to be insanely high when you're at that point. And then he also has the possibility to be effective against all types, but there is a bit of a restriction. It's one enemy, their HP is 58% or more, or when there is a margin boost target category enemy. So it's not super bad, but is a little bit restrictive, but that's just kind of like the cherry on top that you can get that attacks effective against all types. Now, the one downside to him, which people will constantly meme on forever, is that his links are not particularly good, especially when it comes down to Ki. So I think he only has like Saiyan Lineage and then Revival as key links, which obviously a lot of other Saiyan or Hybrid Saiyan units don't have Revival. Saiyan Lineage at level 10 does give 2 keys, so that makes it a little bit easier. But the thing is, a lot of the teams that he's on have access to really, really good support units. So even on his own team, you've got like the High School Gohan. On JP, of course, there's the Super Saiyan 2 Great Saiyan Man that just got his awakening. Bulla, while she's not great herself, is a good support unit for that team. Like, there's a lot of good supports that you can run around him that give key. So it doesn't really matter too much to me that he doesn't have the best key links. And then because he is kind of self-sufficient, like he just sits there on his own and can stack up, even with no links active, he can have very good defense and hit very good attack stats. So I personally don't agree that you have to completely build the team around him for him to be good. And then, of course, when you do that, he's just even better. So that's why I put him at number 3. And then we get to the top 2. So this is the one where people definitely disagreed the most. And again, if you want to switch 1 and 2, that's fine. I personally had Gogeta at 1 and Broly at 2 after Broly first came out, and I'd got to play with him a few times. And then I made that really detailed video the other day, which if you haven't seen, you should check it out, where I compared the two. I ran down a whole bunch of different statistics, including their attack stats, defense, all that stuff. And at the end of that video, I even said, it is kind of down to where you like to use your units and how you like to play the game. But for me personally, I think Broly just about takes the number 1 spot over Gogeta. As much as I love Super Battle Road, you guys know, like, Gogeta explodes out of the gate on turn 1, is insanely good, can counter super attacks. But one thing I noticed, especially from doing the Janemba EZA, if he doesn't counter that super attack, oof, he can take a lot of damage, even though his defense is usually pretty decent. And then Broly, of course, I mean, if you get hit with a super on turn 1, then obviously he is going to take a lot of damage as well. But he's an infinite stacking unit. He's designed for long form events. I really like his team. I like Broly in general. It's not like a favoritism thing. Those of you who already were following me, you know how hyped I was for Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and the full Super Saiyan 4 team. So these two units are among my favorites in the game, just in general, not in terms of how good I think they are. So for me, it is very, very close between them for the top 2. Broly just edges it out because I think at his best, especially once you've gone a few turns into the longer events, like Gogeta just cannot compare to him defensively. And then whilst Gogeta has the attack bonus early on, in a longer form event, Gogeta loses that little bit of his edge when the first part of his passive runs out, whereas obviously Broly just keeps stacking forever. And by the time you get to the very end of a long event and you want to deliver that finishing blow, maybe against UI Goku or whoever the last boss is of the Infinite Dragon Ball History stage, either of them would have their active skill active by that point. But Broly gets so much more extra attack and then gets the guaranteed effective against all types, whereas late into an event, Gogeta only has a chance to be effective against all types. That Broly even out-damages him at those later stages. So, for me, again, I could go either way. Maybe in a few weeks' time, months down the line, maybe I would change my mind and switch for the around to Gogeta at number 1. It's super, super close, but for my final decision, I decided to put Broly at number 1. So, there you go. That is my tier list. Top 10 Dokkan Fest exclusive TURs. EZA's not included on Global. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know where you agree or disagree, but if you do disagree, like I said, I'm happy to discuss any of these points and give further explanations. Just be civil about it. If people want to be dicks in the comments and be super toxic, I will just ban you from the channel. I don't care. Like, I ain't nobody got time for that. So if you want to have healthy discussion about the list, I more than welcome it. If you just want to be a clown, then you can get out. So there you go. For those of you who I'm sure, I know that doesn't apply to most of you guys listening, so for those of you who want to give your opinions and your feedback, I'm happy to hear it, and let me know what you think of the tier list. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.